Instead of slapping criminals on the wrist, we need to institute stiffer penalties. For instance, it should be a felony and an automatic 90 days in jail if someone is caught in public under the influence of any hardcore drug, period. Second offense, it should be 6 months in jail. Third offense should be mandatory 1.5 to 3 years in prison. Another thing that needs to be done is prisons need to stop being adult daycare centers and start making these prisoners work. Imagine if every prison in America could sustain itself by having a farm or manufacturing plant on site. Prisoners would work 12-hour days, 5 days a week, and work 8 hours on the weekends doing chores. There will no longer be more than $20 to $40 allowed for commissary. Um, and the reason for that is because commissary is currency in prison, and it causes a lot of trade in prison as far as, they trade commissary for drugs or, tobacco or, whatever, um, contraband. So that would be something that would kind of help out. Another thing is drug dealers and habitual criminals. I'm talking about the repeat offenders, the people that just keep on and on and on and on, and half of them end up getting into shootouts with the cops, and they end up, getting killed by cops or shooting cops, killing a cop. It just never ends well, and we hear about these stories all the time. Um, and this is going to sound harsh, but I think there's only one solution for them. We need to go back to the old days and bring back the gallows. Um, I think this also needs to happen for repeat sex offenders, repeat child abusers, and repeat murderers. Um, and I say repeat, but I'm not defending child abusers or sex offenders or murderers, but sometimes things do happen. And, sometimes people can be wrongly convicted. Sometimes, you know, in a fit of rage, somebody shoots somebody else. Things happen. There's crimes of passion, crimes of jealousy, that kind of thing. But if it's a one time deal, it's different than somebody that's done it multiple times. Um, and what about the more heinous crimes, like mass shooting, serial killers, which are almost non existent anymore, but they're still out there? Terrorism, just think about the most heinous crimes. I mean, child sex ring leaders, all these really just terrible crimes. This is going to sound even more harsh than the gallows. I think we need to go biblical and bring animals back as means of execution. These people need to have the fear of God put into them and their souls ripped away, just like they did to those who they killed. Moving on, the way we deal with every drug addict is cut off their resources. Food stamps, SSI, disability, HUD, all the government handouts. Every single one of those should have a mandatory monthly drug test to be eligible for those benefits. Also, if they're not disabled to a certain degree, they need to be looking for a job or be employed or at least have a part-time job to be eligible for these benefits. I'm not talking about people with palsy and MS and, severe diabetes and they have a foot missing and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about people that use stuff like bipolar and uh, mild autism as an excuse to get out of work. That's basically what it is. I mean, there's a lot of people that have mental health issues they function just like everybody else does. And the biggest thing that needs to stop is benefits of all these kinds need to stop for drug addicts. Now, I will say this, I have more sympathy for alcoholics than I do drug addicts. Because what alcoholics are doing, they go into a store, they buy it over the counter. In a way, it's no different than tobacco. It's legal. It's the legality of it. But that's another thing that I'll get into a little bit later in this discussion. Another thing is local law enforcement will now have the right to arrest retail theft regardless of the store's company policy. So basically, if somebody's stealing and an employee or customer witnesses it, that person has the right to pick up the phone and call the cops. And the thief, if the thief is caught with the merchandise without the receipt, it should be an automatic felony, 90 days in jail, regardless if it's a banana, or something like that. But a lot of times these drug addicts will go into, what they do is they hit multiple stores in one area, and they do it all day long. That's just what they do. They'll go into, like, say, if there's a grocery store, a mile and a half away from or in the same plaza as a Walmart, Walmart's a little tough, but Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever. They'll hit all these places and they'll steal as much stuff as they possibly can. And a lot of times what they're doing with the things that they steal, and they'll steal from people too, they'll steal things out of your yard, break into your house, steal your car, What they're doing though is they're taking these stolen items, and they used to go to pawn shops and pawn these items in for drug money. Now they take these stolen items directly to the drug dealer, and that drug dealer will take that item and usually put it on Facebook Marketplace. So, and I think that's something that law enforcement's they've got their claws in that, but to me that's small fish. It's really small fish. You need to really look at the bigger picture here. And isn't everybody in America tired of seeing these drug addicts, dope heads, wandering up and down your driveway? And here's another new law that needs to be instituted. Homeowners should have the right to call 911, on people, riding bicycles, carrying weapons, carrying backpacks, break-in tools, that kind of thing. And if they look sketchy, you should have the right to call, And like I said, going back to the first thing I discussed, is if somebody's caught under the influence of a hardcore drug like methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, crack cocaine, etc., it's a felony and an automatic 90 days in jail, first offense. Now, if it's the second offense, it's 6 months in jail. Third offense, 1.5 to 3 years in prison, mandatory. No excuses. And the thing is, these people that are wandering around and all that stuff, this could be potential break-ins, could be murders, robberies, rapes, anything and everything, car theft. It's just, it's something terrible waiting to happen, something that's going to ruin a hardworking American's day or their week or their year or their life, all because our law enforcement is basically turning a blind eye and slapping these people on the wrist because the judicial system is basically, that's what it is. And then it goes up to our politicians, our lawmakers, So moving on. I did a little bit of research on something the other day. And this is something, I was kind of reading off a script before, as I had wrote some things down, and this is something I've been thinking about for a while. But I did a little research the other day, and I found an article in the Washington Post So it turns out that 98.8% of all the drugs in the United States, we're talking marijuana, methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, everything, just everything, 98.8%. It's all coming from Mexico. So there's our problem. Right there is the problem. You know, if you have a pest in your life, you know, you can kill the pest. You know, you can kill the pest all day, but you have to kill the source. And Mexico is the source. Now, how do we fix this problem? Number one, Mexico does not secure its own borders. That's a big problem. I'm not just talking about the United States Mexico border. I'm talking about the entire border of Mexico, especially below Mexico, going into, Central and South America. You know, that's where a lot of your drugs are walking their way up to the United States through. You know, it's coming from those places to the cartels into Mexico. You know, that's just how it is. That's how this has been going on for years. Now, what if we had a strong politician in office, strong president? What needs to happen is the president needs to address this directly to Mexico and tell them, say, hey, you know what? You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to secure your own borders. And the other thing that's pretty harsh is the Mexican military is going to have to man up and go out and kill these cartel leaders and just the whole cartels. I mean, because that's the source of the American drug problem. At the same time, that's a big part of Mexico's economy. So Mexico's not going to want to do that. The Mexican government's they're not going to do it. So what do? We put sanctions on them, cut off their trade. But who's that going to hurt ultimately? Probably us more than them. Then again, you never know. But what's going to have to happen, and it's been needing to happen for years, is we need to introduce Mexico to United States military. We need to tell them, say, hey, we've got this many deployable soldiers ready at all times. I think it's 1,008,000. I'm talking about soldiers on the ground ready to go all the time. I think Mexico, don't quote me on this, I'm pretty sure they're deployable soldiers, like ready to go soldiers. It's 200,000, give or take. So, I mean, you're talking about 200,000 soldiers versus 1,800,000. And we got a lot more tanks. We got a lot more air support. Got a shit ton more bombs. Everything we have is superior to what Mexico has. So, but that's what's going to have to happen. It's either going to be, if we don't do something about this, America is it's going to be like the Night of the Living Dead. Because these drug addicts just keep multiplying. So, that's the solution right there. That's the solution to all of America's drug problems. The war on drugs is nothing but a bunch of shit. This, what I'm talking about, is the solution to the drug problem. Just end it. So,